I would like to say hello to everyone and welcome to an online chess class. Today we'll be looking at a very entertaining topic. It was very interesting topic for me as well to prepare for. It's called chess miniatures. So what we're going to look at are going to be the games, especially famous player games or grandmaster games that finished very early on. So a lot of times there will be a mistake made early in the opening or in very early middle game, and most of these games have finished in under 20 moves. I believe I saw statistics yesterday that on average game consists of 36 moves. So for a chess game, these are going to be quite short ones. Now, before we start, I would like someone to say hello in the chat. Don't be shy. And also confirm if you're able to hear me well and also see me. I'll just give a moment for the people to gather as well. I always want to hear a confirmation that everyone can see me and hear me well. Because if I was speaking to myself, that would be one of the loneliest things to do on the stream, right? All right. All right, perfect. So I have a confirmation that you're able to see me well and hear me well. Now, throughout the stream, I welcome any kind of chess-related questions. If there will be a question about some of the moves or an opening or about a particular line, please don't hesitate and ask me those questions. I will do my best to answer those. You can use me as your personal chess coach in this stream. And along the way, I would also like to give you a lot of exercises in the opening and middle game whenever the opponent is going to make a mistake. So before I show you that entertaining part, the so-called kill in chess, when one guy is winning the game, I will give you a chance perhaps to solve it as well. So without further ado, what I would like to start with is a player that played chess 400 years ago, Gioacchino Greco. And in most of the databases that we have nowadays, he's going to be one of the oldest players that we have games of. And he was beating people out of the opening. I know that many people have heard of the Paul Morphy and considering him one of the greatest players of all time, which he is, because he had an amazing score and at his peak he was beating everyone in the world. And another player that is a bit underrated with that regard is Gioacchino Greco, an Italian chess player that was also beating everyone, and I don't think we even have recordings of more than a couple of games he lost, and at least I found over 40 games where he won. So quite an impressive start for the Italian chess player, and I would like to show you 4 games that were won very quickly by this player. So he opens up with e4 in this game, and the opponent plays b6. So what can we say about b6? Well, it's a move that does fight for the center. You cannot say that it doesn't fight for the center at all, because the idea of blacks is going to play bishop b7. So usually black deliberately allows white's pawns to go to the center so that later we would be able to apply the pressure on the opponent's pawn. So you could imagine at d4, bishop to b7, and nowadays if say people play something like knight c3, which is super solid, black will try to attack the center from the side. Even the move bishop to b4 is spinning the knight, which controls the center. So sometimes moves on the side can influence the center. However, in this game, Greco played more natural bishop d3. We're just defending the pawn, which is currently hanging. And we have f5. So a very aggressive move by black. They're trying to undermine the white center, or after the pawn moves or takes, their idea is to play bishop takes g2 when white seems to be losing a rook. And here I would like to give you a first exercise. What would you play with the white pieces? White has sequence of moves after which they're going to be winning. winning doesn't necessarily mean a checkmate. It could just mean a very good position and advantage in material. So white to play. Don't be so shy. Please say hello in the chat. I'm welcoming all the questions and answers. So white to play and win or obtain a very good position. What would you play here with the white pieces? Seems like a weird opening, I know, but trust me, it's not so unpopular as one might be thinking in this specific position. So we have one suggestion in the chat to play f3 as well. So just defend the pawn with our pawn. That is playable, but probably that doesn't give us the winning position. Sometimes also, of course, we have to just watch out for queen h4 checks in case the pawn was on e6, but here the queen cannot come to h4. So this still gives like a solid position. So assume black wouldn't be taking, and on e4 they would probably just solidify the center with something e6. However, white has a very good combination here. And finally, we have a lot of answers also. I would like to say hello to Sanjay and Rahul and all the others in the chat. Apologies if I cannot pronounce your name perfectly. But I see your answers, and yes, you are right. It's taking actually the pawn on f5 and dropping the pawn and even the rook on g2 and h1. Why? Because as in the game, white has this very powerful check, queen h5. And because now the pawn is on f5, after g6 we're able to take. So in the game we had g6, white played f takes g6, and now knight to f6. So here, where is the checkmate in 2, guys? Please find checkmate in 2 over here. And the game will be won in under 10 moves. The power of Greco. Yes, so we have g takes h7, which is a discovered attack. And after knight takes h5, a queen sack, we have bishop g6 mate. Congratulations to all of you who solved this one. Very good. Let's go on with the second game that was played by the same player. And this time we have an opening that is not very good for white, but 400 years ago they didn't know that. And it's called King's Gambit, which leads to all sort of very dangerous attacks. There are many ways for black to deal with that. One of the safe options, if you want to avoid sharpness, would be the move at d5. And here, after taking on d5, we take on f4. White is unable to take on e5 due to this queen h4, which just leads to black winning the game right away. Everything starts hanging. And so d takes f4 and takes on f4. Here already there is less sharpness, and black would be playing the game this way with the move knight f6 to start, and then I'm sorry, white has to play knight f3, of course, to stop queen h4, and then knight f6 to win the pawn back on d5. However, these players 400 years ago were also very brave, and after knight f3, there are quite a few other ways to play here. We could play d6, we could play g5, but this player played h6. So the aim is probably to prepare g5. So we have bishop to c4, g5 by black, already a very messy position. And now Greco was very brave and played h4. So look at the white's king, it's completely open, but for now at least black doesn't have pieces to develop the initiative and checkmate or run an attack against the white's king. So black played f6. And now after f6, white is winning, but the move is very, very hard, I would say, if you're not familiar with the King's Gambit tactics. So I'm giving this exercise to you. It is white to play and win. Win means achieving a checkmate or winning material like a piece. Of course, there are quite a few moves that lead to good positions, but there is one that is just completely winning. So white to play and win. Can anyone see white to play and win? So it's a very unnatural move at first if you're not familiar with the idea, but in a lot of King's Gambits, so we have Karan who says the right answer. Someone is also suggesting bishop to f7, but I don't think there is a follow-up currently after bishop f7. But the correct answer here is knight e5 with just the killing idea of queen h5. So black has exposed their king, and we're now making sense of those weak and dark light squares around the black's king. And there is pretty much no way to stop all this. So we had f takes e5, queen to h5, and we had a deadly attack. So white is just enjoying himself, king to d6, and now queen to d5 check, king to e7, and queen takes e5. Game was won very early on. So congratulations to those who have solved this one. A couple more games by the powerful Greco. We had e4, e5 in this game, knight to f3, no longer a King's Gambit. Now f6, and here there is a very common mistake that is only made by those who are just starting out the game, but there is an immediate kill in this position and white could be winning tactically very quickly. The go-to strategic move would be bishop to c4, making sense on the light squares. And this is also good, very good from strategy point of view. White should be strategically winning, but there is a fast tactical win. If you can, please suggest a couple of moves. Let me know all the line in the chat. But I'm pretty sure that those who say the right move here knows what they're talking about. And here we have again knight e5 with the same idea of queen h5. So whenever f pawn is touched, as you see in many lines, we have to be looking at queen to h5. That is a very natural move. So we had f takes e5, queen to h5, and the black's king starts running. Now, if you want to hunt down the black's king in any kind of position, we need to bring more and more pieces to attack it. Essentially, what, for example, a kingside attack is nothing else but you having more pieces on the king side than your opponent. So if you look at the board and you see that white pieces are able to come, or more of white pieces are able to come to the king side than opponents, especially when opponent's king is exposed, then we call this a kingside attack. So now bishop is coming, and here queen is landing another check to force the king to the side. Now the dark square bishop is joining the party, and it's inevitable that white is gonna bring pieces until they start creating threats. So the last move, h4, also attempts to bring out the rook with the ideas of taking on g5. And now already, as I believe Tarash or Tartakover used to say, 3 pieces are checkmate if they're near the opponent's king. And here we have almost 4. And white won the game very early on. So these were the games that were entertaining 400 years ago. And now let's go to a little bit more modern games. I have a lot of examples to show you. Let's click on number 5. So this was the quickest loss that a master had. We had c6 and now e3. And on the next move of black's, white resigned. So black to play and win. A very easy tactic, but was missed by a very strong player, a grandmaster. So black to play, and how did white lose the game? Thank you all for being so active. It's a pleasure of working with such an audience. Right, so everyone is screaming at me. Queen a5 was played in the game, and the game is lost as there is a simple double attack on the bishop of whites and the king. All right, if those who think, hey, this is pretty simple, this happened in the real game, Grandmaster game, but don't worry, I'm gonna get you to very, very hard ones where only some of you will be able to solve, I guarantee that. Another simple example, this was the shortest game that has been lost by the world champion. This game was lost by Viswanathan Anand. So Anand is black and their opponent is playing with black. Knight f3, knight f6, we have the pitch of defense. Knight takes e5, d6, knight to f3. Knight takes e4, again, all theory. And now after knight c3, the main line here is knight takes c3, knight f6 is an alternative line. However, there is an interesting story behind this game. I don't know how real it is, but that's what I have heard in numerous sources, that before this game, a couple of days ago, Viswanathan Anand was reading a magazine, a chess magazine, and he saw that in this position, some other grandmaster played bishop to f5. And he decided to try it out without even thinking. He trusted the magazine and the resource. But what they didn't write in the magazine, or what he didn't read in there, is that those two players were friends that played in the game bishop f5. And so they just wanted to agree to a quick draw. And bishop f5 was just a move against a friend. And Anand did not know that. He thought that this is a serious game. And it turns out to be a very serious error. So white to play, how can white win the game? By winning material or achieving a checkmate. On the next move, actually, the world champion resigned even. So white to play, and perhaps you can see how did Grandmaster, the world champion, lost. Rahul is always so active in my streams. Thank you. And a lot of the times he's also seeing all the best moves. And so we have a very beautiful pin queen e2. And after queen e2, the world champion resigned with the black pieces. What is the point of that? Well, as we learned previously in the pins topic, when we have something pinned, we want to put pressure on it or consider putting pressure on it. And black is just going to lose a piece. A couple of lines. For example, if queen to e7, which seems to be the go-to move in all of these tactics, and usually it is defending quite well. But here white just has knight d5. Now, if the queen leaves the e file, we're going to, for example, let's just say play queen d8. Then we're playing d3, and next move we can take the knight. Knight cannot run away due to the pin on the e file. And the queen cannot maintain itself on the e file because queen e6 will run into knight c7 fork when we're forking the opponent's king and the queen, or double attacking. Also, if black was just, say, to play d5, which would be supporting the knight which was attacked, white can play d3, and on the next move we're winning a piece. So this was the shortest game that was lost by a world champion, and I'm sure that it was just an accident by the great Indian chess player. All right, next, now we're gonna get a little bit to a bit harder one soon. This one is still very, very quick. It's very unusual, and I found it very, very beautiful. I hope you're gonna enjoy that as well. Today's topic is very entertaining. It's the shortest games, and there has to be some fireworks. Congratulations to also Karan and Tran, to all of those who spotted it correctly. And this game is very fun one. So we have d4, knight f6, knight d2, kind of a weird way of playing. But yeah, the knight still supports e4, c4. It's still playable, I guess, just not the most ambitious way of playing. And we had e5 now. So kind of like Budapest Gambit almost. And black is giving up the pawn. And we have knight g4 here. And white is wondering and asking, what is that knight doing there? Let's kick it out, I guess. And he expected h3, knight takes e5, and just a normal game. But after h3, black surprised white. And then the next move, white resigned. what can black play here? So it's black to play and win. Very beautiful one. Yes, congratulations to those who saw it. It's kind of not the most rare pattern, but it's kind of unusual because I'm sure you all see this for the first time. It's not any kind of theory of an ambitious opening or anything like that. But the point is knight e3. And what we learned in the previous example, don't touch the f-pawn because there are those checks by the queen on the side. Now, if they take queen h4, and a checkmate. So same again, don't touch the f-pawn if you don't know what you're doing. There are many openings where you can touch the f-pawn and it's very good, right? But you have to be aware of this explosion on this diagonal. And of course, if they don't take, next move, the queen is trapped, right? So you have to choose whether you give up the king or the queen, right? Yeah, and we're winning. Okay, let's get to harder ones now. And finally, we're going to look at a bit longer game. Now, this game was played by Dorfman versus Romanishyn. So two very famous players, not perhaps the world champion caliber, but two very strong and famous players, theoreticians, famous coaches, and white is going to make a blunder that will allow black, again, a very beautiful tactic. So we have knight f3, g6. Black is hoping to attack the center from the sides, from the distance. e4, bishop to g7, d4, d6. So an attempt to neutralize a bit e5. Maybe we want to develop the knight square bishop in the future to g4, knight to c3, bishop to g4. So, or pretty common, black is hoping to attack the center and at some point to undermine it with moves like e5s and c5s, perhaps, whichever is possible, and white is just hoping to maintain that space advantage. So bishop e3, knight to c6. So black is looking to attack the black center with e5. So that is the point of the move knight to c6. We're supporting that move. So for example, if we would have, let's say bishop e2 here, black just strikes with e5. And then black is pretty much getting what he wants. White is still much better. So I assume if we, for example, take, I can take back, and now white doesn't have the majority of the pawns in the center no longer. So the go-to move most of the time would be the move d5, which wins the so-called space advantage. We're restricting the black's pieces. But now black goes with his most common plan in these structures, say knight c7 and castle. And now must remember idea. Black is hoping to hit the center with f5. However, f5 immediately is a blunder, strategic blunder. What's the problem with f5? I can flip the board. Why is f5 a bad move here? Now white is just strategically completely winning. What should white play now? All of those who just came, hope you're enjoying the stream. If you enjoyed the lesson, I would appreciate if you put a like on this video. That means a lot to me, and then I know that you're enjoying the lesson. Thank you very much. So what should white play here? You're welcome. Thank you all for watching. Thank you. I'm Genius Chess 2006 as well. I'm mostly reading the chat on Chess24 on YouTube, but I will do my best and follow some of the comments on the Twitch of ours as well. So guys, what should we play here as white? Very tricky, right? And it's a very good plan for black, but it was just not the time to play f5. And Rahul is very right. So white is going to play, sorry, wrong arrow, knight to g5 with idea of knight to d6. And the problem for black is that we're swapping the light square bishop. So you will lose the guard of the e6 square. So now white just plays knight to g5. and light square bishops get swapped, and there is nothing you can do to stop it. So say the bishop, okay, like whether white takes or I take, doesn't matter, I guess you have to take. So queen to e2, and now knight is coming to e6, and it's just a monster. It's such a good knight, and I'm so scared of it if my opponent has it, that I wake up in the middle of the night and look under my bed if there is no knight on e6. It's as scary as it gets, basically, right? So the way to play this plan with f5 correctly with the black pieces, let me flip the board again, would be to drop the bishop back to d7 first. And now we're preparing f5. So for example, let's just say they play something, okay, like rook e1, and then you kind of want to play f5. And e6 now is covered. This is still an idea, and it's still good idea for white. You can still go knight g5 and knight e6, but it's not as strong as in the previous one. Most of the time also, white in these ideas, when they play knight g5, they're not worried of this pawn, and a lot of times they also make sense of this d5 square. Maybe not in this case, but this is go-to candidate move when you're having this pawn on e6 and freeing the square on d5, especially when you're exchanging the pawns, right? Or moving the pawns. Think about who frees squares for their pieces. In this case, perhaps white square free the square on d5. So this didn't happen in the game though. White just played d5 right away, and now we can play knight e5 because of this pin along this diagonal. So bishop to e2, and now we have knight takes, pawn takes, bishop h5. So bishop h safe, it's kind of annoying, I would say. Perhaps here black already says white has space, but my dark square bishop is really good. How would I draw an arrow like this? And white already has also doubled pawns on the f file. So bishop to b5 we had, which forces the black king to go to f8, as c6 is not possible due to obvious. So we play king to f8, and now white castled, and here black played e6. So what is the idea of the black's move e6? Well, what we want to do is we want to bring our queen near the opponent's king. The pawn structure is damaged, and if you remember from the previous examples, a kingside attack happens when we bring more pieces to the kingside than our opponent. And here white made soon a mistake. First d takes, f takes. So they're trying to open up the center a little bit. That's usually where the counterplay lies, right? If one side is attacking on the flank, you gotta push in the center. Perhaps black was also threatening e5 if I look at that, right? So that's one of the reasons perhaps white also took, I guess. And we have bishop to e2, queen to h4, and now king h1. And white seems to be okay, but he is not. So what was missed by the great player Dorfman, one of the greatest coaches of all time? What was missed? What can black play in this position to win the game? It's a very beautiful tactic. So someone is suggesting already quite a few moves. We have queen h3 as a suggestion, but here maybe we have rook g1, right? So if you play bishop e5, don't forget I can always play f4, right? So a good try. So black to play and win. It's an idea that was missed by such a strong player that I don't expect you to find it easily, but I promise you that the solution is going to be visually very pleasing. All right, so we have the right move in the chat. It is bishop to f3. And the idea is that you're taking away the f4 possibilities of white when we're going to play bishop e5. So that's where the mate is going to happen on h2. So we just played bishop takes f3, and bishop takes f3. Actually, after bishop f3, white resigned. So there is no defense. So after we take, we have bishop a5, and now we don't have a way to defend against mate. So no longer you can play f4, right? Beautiful tactic. Congratulations. Hello. Hello, I can see same usernames. Unfortunately, I just cannot read your username, but I recognize you. You have a green profile picture. Hello and welcome. So let's take a look at the next chess miniature, next beautiful chess game. Number 9. So this one is a very famous one. So some of you, or even half of you maybe, might have seen it. Those who have not are gonna enjoy the visually pleasing the solution. So e4, and the next ones are gonna be rare once again. c6, d4, d5, we have the Caro-Kann defense. Knight to c3, takes and takes, knight to f6, all theory so far. And now white plays queen d3, so a little bit more rare move, but the argument is that the queen here is developed, and there is no way for black to easily expose the queen without creating weaknesses, and queen here seems to be enjoying a good square. So black just played e5, white took, black regains the pawn with a double attack, queen a5. We had bishop d2, takes and castles. And the problem for black is, he won the pawn back, is that white already has a deadly initiative. A deadly lead in time and development, and because the position is open and black's king is in the middle, this is no matter what probably lost for black. To make things worse, they took on e4, and now white has a lethal combination. It was Reshevsky versus Tartakover. And of course, those who have seen the game already know the whole line and sequence. I will not take long on this exercise. I will just give 20 seconds, 10 seconds to those who would have not seen it. And those who will be on the video, of course, they will be able to stop the video and think for a bit longer. Aha, we have a suggestion. All right, even a couple. I see the right move in the chat. One, someone is suggesting rook e1. A lot of times this will be the go-to move. Yes, we're pinning the knight and trying to win the knight there. I guess black would right now just play bishop f5 for now, can't we, right? And what's the problem, right? That if we play f3, we could just, I guess, there are quite a few ways I can play this, maybe even. Is it winning a piece as well, I wonder? Imagine we play something like queen c5 and we take on e4 and bishop e6. Is black looking fine? I think we are, right? We are looking fine. I forgot that by taking on e4 we took a piece, so rook e1 only wins the piece back. I was scared that I made a mistake somewhere in the game, but I have not. So the go-to move here is queen d8, and it's a very common mating pattern that I think after this game everyone will know. We're giving up a rook in order to follow that up with a double check. So we have king takes d8, bishop to g5. Even the bravest king must run in the face of the double check. And after king c7, we have a beautiful mate on bishop to d8. All right, so next game, a lot more rare. So this was a game between Mikhail Tal and an amateur. Very beautiful game. So we have e4, Tal is playing white, c5, and we have the Sicilian. So Najdorf, d6, d4, all theory, takes, knight f6, provoking the knight to c3, as if we don't provoke knight to c3, white will play the upgraded version of the Sicilian with the 2 pawns in the center. So knight f6 is important in most of the lines. Knight to c3, a6. So black is taking away the b5 square where bishops and knights at some point in the game will want to go, perhaps. So we have bishop to g5, e6, f4, and black strikes back on the queen side. So far white has a little bit more space. Central control, I would say, is equal, and we have e5. A sensible move since we have the knight pinned on that diagonal. Yes, Mikhail Tal, a lot of love for Tal in the chat. Yes. So I have quite a few games by Tal prepared for today. So we have d takes e. I promise you, this is going to be amazing, right? Amazing game. Magic. F takes e5, queen c7. So black is not losing a piece, because if we take, there is queen e5, a double check. Or not a double check, double attack, apologies. And black wins the piece back. So we have queen e2. Now the knight is free to move. We're applying the pressure against the e5 pawn. Castles long, bishop to b7. And now we have finally the start of the magic by the magician of Riga, the great Mikhail Tal. So, white started with a very interesting move that is not necessarily the most correct move, but Mikhail Tal did not care if the sacrifice is correct or not. What Mikhail Tal cared about is that he wins the game, right? Any means necessary. So we have a sack, after which we have queen g4. So queen g4 starts asking questions about the e6 pawn. Queen to b6. Now, if you may wonder, like, why cannot we take the pawn, then bishop to d3 is just deadly, because queen h5 is coming next, and I guess this is not the position to play for black. Now, queen to b6 allows white a sort of tactic that will lead to a deadly attack. So now white to play, and you can try to understand the glimpse of the great magician of Riga, the world champion Mikhail Tal. What can white play here? All right, we already see a couple of good suggestions in the chat. Congratulations. So there are quite a few moves that are playable here, but Mikhail Tal went for a very forcing one. So bishop d3 is one suggestion in the chat. We still have all of those ideas with queen h5, right? But now maybe black can take knight takes e5, right? So I wonder what is happening here, because it's a fork, right? I guess if queen h5 now, the knight is supporting the pawn on g6, and so we could kick the queen out. Now we don't have a sack, but it's definitely a move that otherwise would be also a candidate move that we would consider. Just here we have knight takes e5, that doesn't work. So someone in the chat was right. They suggested the right move, rook to d6, and the whole point of it is interference with the black's queen defense over the e6 pawn. So next move we can take on e6. So a beautiful sacrifice, bishop takes d6, queen takes e6, and now white started the attack. The next move again is from the level of insanity, I would say. Mikhail Tal, bishop to c4, right? So what's the idea? I guess the idea is that we prepared getting the rook into the game. So we had takes on c4, rook f1, knight to f6 takes, rook takes even, right? And then we have a checkmate, right? What more can you expect? And Tal played like thousands of games like that. Simply a genius, right? Right. All of you who are enjoying the stream and those who just came, I would appreciate if you put a like on this video. That means a lot to me. All right, and let's go to the next game. We have too much fun. We have to look at a couple more games. All right, I have a lot for today. All righty, right. So now we're going to see a good game by the other world champion, Tigran Petrosian. He's going to have a deadly attack. So we have c5, g3, knight c6, bishop g2. White is playing the so-called King's Indian attack, e6. And white, his setup is always suited for e4. So knight g to e7, rook to e1, castles, and black makes a committing move e5, I mean white. So I guess we're winning space, and That space is so good that black is going to undermine that space advantage with playing d6. Takes, knight bd2, just casual development, prophylactic move queen c7, not to run into any knight e4s and knight c4s when the black's queen is hit. Knight to b3, we're just getting to the fireworks. Knight to d4, all seem to be okay. Knight d4, I guess, is just occupying the outpost that we have. Most of the time, of course, nowadays I would just prefer developing, and if my student played knight d4, I would ask white not just develop, but okay, who am I to judge the masters, right? Grandmasters, one of the top level players in the world at the time. Bishop to f4, queen to b6, knight to e5. So white is starting to deploy all of the pieces for suited attack. I think white finally has coordination with his pieces. Knight takes b3, and now according to Fischer, we have great in-between move by the great world champion Tigran Petrosian. Knight to c4, so that we could place the bishop on d6. So we have queen to b5, takes on b3, a5, and soon the fireworks will start. I think black is just undeveloped. White's bishops are amazing. Black's bishop is undeveloped. Rook on e1 makes a lot of sense. Queen doesn't have to have any target. White's rook is playing. White, I think, is winning. So bishop to d6, bishop to f6, and now white slowly prepares a deadly kill on the king side. Queen f3, king g7, and rook to e4. White is again bringing the pieces to the king side. That's what a king side attack means. One side having more pieces on a particular side of the board than the opponent. King side this way. And after rook d8, we already have a kill. So now it's up for you to find what was played by the great world champion here with the white pieces. So white to play and win the game. All right, chat is screaming the correct move. Yes, so we have queen to f6. Queen to f6, and the whole point of it is what follows next. So we play bishop to e5, and bishop g7 is the point. And white is just having black's king in the box. So we're covering away these, and pawns are coming to checkmate. So black resigns. So if say like the way checkmate looks, I guess we just start pushing h and g pawns, and black is lost, unfortunately. So great kill by the world champion. Pretty early, game was only 20 moves. Now I would like to see a game that was played between Spassky and Bent Larsen, another world champion with the white pieces, and the game only was 20 moves. So we have the Caro-Kann defense. Bishop to f5, knight to g3, bishop to g6. All theory, if white plays knight f3, black needs to play knight d7 in order to prevent knight e5. And if h4, black is threatening, white is threatening to win the bishop, so black just plays h6 to make this square available for the black's light square bishop. So knight to f3, knight d7, h5, bishop h7. Believe it or not, this is all very common theory. Bishop to d3, takes, knight to f6, bishop f4, normal development. And in these structures in general, black is looking for the ways to undermine the white center, c5, e5 at some point. The best reaction to that, if possible under good circumstances, perhaps would be d5, and white is just enjoying the space. So white would just play c4, possibly a kingside attack. Like if black castles on the king side, I get the knight to e4. g4, g5 becomes a go-to idea in a lot of these lines. So kingside attack. Otherwise, white could just enjoying space. Now, if white doesn't have the pawn on c4, let's just say on c3, maybe black can make sense of the d5 square and make the pawn to b5 to prevent the pawn break to c4. So these are like some of the ideas in this structure and the Caro-Kann. Let's see how they tackle that. Castles, bishop e7, and now we have knight to e5. A lot of times knight e4 is played also in these structures just to somehow prepare just g4. Or black, on the other hand, will find counterplay with moves like c5, or even, I believe, knight e4. There are ideas that look like this: knight f6, and after queen e2 we have ideas of queen d5. Lots of activity, with even an offer to exchange the queens. As if the queens get exchanged, white no longer has this g4 g5. Any queen exchange benefits black. Black is super happy and has no problems. So white played knight e5, a5, an attempt to create counterplay on the queen side. Rook h1, a4. The goal of all this is to open up the a file in order to attack the white's king. So we have knight to g6. So here comes the idea of what happens if knight g6. There isn't supposed to be a kill, but black didn't castle in time, and so now he will pay the price for it. So who can give me the line? Oh, already see the line in the chat. So yes, takes on g6, queen g6, and after rook e6, already knight coming to f5, and I guess too many pieces of whites are surrounding the black's king. So instead, knight to d5 was played. Now Boris Spassky, the great world champion, played another spectacular move here: knight to f5. And here I have a question for you. It's a very hard question. What happens after e takes f5? So there is no way you will solve this quickly, unless you're Stockfish. Is Stockfish in the chat? We have an engine in the chat. So what happens after e takes f5? Someone's saying no, there is no engine in the chat. Yeah. Yes. So if takes on f5, we're playing knight to e7, as two people already pointed out, and bishop to d6. And because of the pin, next move we take the knight, and white is winning. So that was it. So white played knight to f5, black didn't take it. Black played bishop f8, and it suddenly just becomes too passive for Bent Larsen to tackle. So we had bishop to d6, rook to g8. Just look how passive it is. It's the weirdest game I have seen, right? Or the weirdest position that I have seen from the Caro-Kann. Everything went wrong, and at the same time we have two knights hanging. What is happening? Let me put an arrow here, right? So I guess the point is that whenever we take this one, white just takes, and queen g6 follows, and it's hasta la vista for black. Disaster. So same tricks. So rook g8, c4, and Boris Spassky soon won the game. It's so spectacular that the knights are still hanging. Like, I cannot help myself still. Okay, f5 is not hanging due to the spin, but g6 is. So finally they took rook to e6, king f7, and now we had the kill. So luring the black's king out, and black resigned. This is not a king you played with, right? Look at the king on e6. So this is how Caro-Kann went very wrong. Right. Another game by Bent Larsen, and also in the Caro-Kann. Apologies, like I have nothing against Bent Larsen. Sorry, the previous game, it was played by Belavsky, and this one is going to be played by Spassky versus same opponent, Larsen. So Belavsky, another very famous player. So here Boris Spassky versus Larsen, d4 d5, knight c3 takes, very similar stuff, exactly the same as in the previous game. But here we have queen e5. So queen e5, a lot of times this move is actually played in, let me just show you a trick of the Caro-Kann, right? Like this. We have all the same line. And just like in the previous example. And white gets this annoying bishop f4, which seems to be very pleasant, right? So a lot of times black plays queen a5, and the theory is to just bishop d2 here, when black is taking away and taking that original diagonal away. Of course, you can play c3, but black gets his own compensation, and there are drawbacks to this as well. So queen a5 not in the same line, but we could have similar ideas. So bishop to d2, and now queen to c7, same trick. So bishop takes g6, h takes g6, queen e2, preparing long castles maybe in the future. e6, knight to e4, castles by black. g3, a go-to move a lot of the times to prevent any bishop f4, bishop to f4 by black ideas. c5. So black is undermining the white center. This is the go-to move, but perhaps in this case, it was a little bit premature because of what will happen in the game. So we have c5, bishop to f4, still winning that tempo, right? Bishop still got it. Queen to c6, castles, c4, knight to c3, knight to h6. And here, an exercise for you again. I'm sorry that Ben Larson loses the second Caro-Kann game in a row, but again, a spectacular game. The previous one was played by Belavsky, this time by Spassky. Someone is asking, suggest good books for openings for intermediate players. Depends on what intermediate player means. If you already looked at the classics, right, there are so many books to choose from that I think you cannot go wrong with. If you want to build like the strongest repertoire, that would be of Rook, right? Boris of Rook has very good repertoires, but there are so many that I believe if you pick up a book from any trusted source, any trusted grandmaster, you're going to be very much fine. We have 95 as a suggestion. That's actually a lot of times the go-to move in these positions as well, but here you do not want to exchange pieces. You have space, right? So after takes on e5, I don't know what we're getting to. I think that if you take with the pawn, like you open up the d file, black is pretty comfortable. Like say bishop to b4, rooks might get swapped over the d file. Remember, black has less space, so he wants to exchange the pieces, right? Queen to e5, I understand this idea, but now we're just running into bishop to d6, right? You were threatening mate. And after bishop to e5, I guess we're not getting anywhere as well. Maybe f6, right? Maybe just knight to f5 would be this. So this is going to be a crazy move, okay? Just opening everything up. So we also had knight g5 as a suggestion. I guess we're targeting b7. But f7, I mean. But this is guarded, and now black gets this outpost on d5. So with the next move, maybe we can go there. I guess here the moves bishop b4, knight d5 next come to mind. Spassky just played d5, he let it go, right? With the calm hand on the calm heart, right? You're just opening everything up, and now is the time. So after e takes d5, we have rook takes d5. And look at the white's initiative, right? All of the white's pieces are very active, while black's pieces seem to be quite uncoordinated, right? The knight on d7 is quite okay, but already an open game you would want it maybe on b6. Knight on h6 is not doing anything. Bishop f8, rook h8, again, out of where they should be perhaps. And white at the right time opened it up. And after bishop to c5, we have rook h to d1, f6, and now a move that just, I guess, wins on the spot, a bit crazy. There are quite a few moves we could play here. By the way, though, all of you new who come to the stream and you're enjoying it, I appreciate if you can put a like on the video. Thank you so much. That means a lot to me. So the move that was played by the great world champion here was rook to d6. And there doesn't seem to be a clear-cut bam, 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 I win everything back, or bam, bam, mate. but it just leads to deadly initiative. And after bishop takes, rook takes, I don't know where to place the queen, right? If we place it on c7, then knight b5, right? In the game, queen to c5 was tried, now rook to d5, and I guess we're just resigning here very soon, right? So queen c6, a knight b5. How do we defend against knight a7 mate threat here, right? So again, this walked over it, and Caro-Kann went very, very wrong for Ben Larsen. But Ben Larsen had many great wins in the Caro-Kann, but I guess not these two games. All right, we can look at definitely one more. Number 14. This is going to be a beautiful one. So we have another Caro-Kann, lots of Caro-Kann today. Very similar position, but instead black tries this knight d7. The idea being is that we want to play knight f6 and take back the knight with our other knight. So we have knight g5 looking at f7. So I guess if h6, we have a very similar idea that we already saw today. What do you think would be maybe the move here for white? Very similar idea. I'm not sure, but looks very compelling move. Very similar idea to what we saw today. So queen h5 in these situations, like, it's a very important move to know, but I guess after g6 we don't get anything, right? But maybe we'll have knight e6 again. What do you think, right? Because if takes, right, we have mate, right? So knight e6, queen has to move. And then we take their good bishop and their king cannot castle, right? So white must be much better here, yeah? So they didn't play h6. So we have knight to f6, bishop to d3, g6, fianchettoing the bishop, knight f3, bishop g7, queen e2 again, as you see, kind of popular move in this variation of the Caro-Kann, pinning the e-pawn, castles, h4. And after h6, what do you think white played? So now white to play. So white to play. What do you think white played next? So we have a suggestion to play knight to e6 and same, like knight e6 everywhere. We must try it everywhere, right? So I guess here we again do have a compensation, right? e6 might be dropping, right? But the question is if it's really enough, right? And white played a bit differently. White played h5. So going after the g6 pawn like that. So it's another way to sack the knight, I guess. So if h takes g5, takes, now queen e6, and now I guess this whole combination is much stronger. Not necessarily made the best moves for black, but one of the possible lines. So we had knight takes h5, now g4, and after knight hf6, finally your idea, which was initial, knight e6 work. So now I hope that you will always look for these knight e6 in Caro-Kann, right? Quite a few games that were won very fast. So knight to e6, and if f takes e6, then queen takes e6, and we have an attack. So rook f7, pretty much one of the only moves. I guess otherwise we also can take on h6, right? So king h7, like takes. If they take, we have at the very least g5 and winning everything back. But in the game, rook f7 happened. And then we just pinned the rook, we take on g6 and we're getting everything back. So queen to f8, g5, and again, white is just getting too many pieces to the king side, black is boxed in. Knight to d5, takes on h6, rook on h1, that helps so much. Knight to e5, and now the final kill, bishop h7. So the idea is that if we take, then we open up the h file. It's a discovered attack, and queen h6 is going to lead to mate. So quite a messy position, quite a huge tactics. Remember that today's topic was a lot for entertainment, more than learning, I guess. But by looking at these patterns and these massive games that were lost very, very fast, I guess we learned a lot of tactical ideas and new ideas of how to sack and mate and follow that up. Right. I hope everyone enjoyed the stream today. Our time is coming to an end. Thank you for all the likes on the video. I appreciate that a lot. I will see you myself next Tuesday. I'm welcoming to the Tuesday's class. Stay safe, my friends. Continue loving the game. Play chess, analyze, get better. All right, and see you on Tuesday. All right, I'm saying goodbye. Thank you very much for watching. I appreciate it.